Hey guys, welcome to an art commentary. Today we're going to be painting from a reference. We're going to use a screenshot I took from the game Fortnite of the Omega skin jumping with his shotgun. I'm sure we all know what it feels like to get double pumped in the face. I know I do. So I thought that would be a cool action pose to use as a reference. Basically what I did, if you want to get references from the game, is I just went in to one of my replays and positioned the camera where I liked it and took a screenshot and then pulled it into Photoshop as a reference. I didn't record my sketching process for this one. I just felt like no one would really want to watch that long, arduous process, but maybe on other videos I will record. I'll show my sketching process. Anyway, let's get into it. So I'm basically just putting a solid layer of color down right now. It's the local color, which is the color of an object without shadow or light on it. I'm using an opaque brush, or relatively opaque, getting the layer nice and opaque so that everything I do to it afterwards isn't color or anything being affected to a partly transparent layer. When you put together your base layer, you're going to want it to be nice and opaque. Just adding in some light areas that I noticed, so when I do my shadow and light layers later, they just are already sorted out. And you'll notice I also have a color palette that I created up above. That's just so I can get back to rudimentary color anytime I want. I mean, I know I can grab the color from the reference, but it's just a habit to have a color palette. By the way, if you're not aware of how to get colors from things, you hold down Alt and the color picker will come up and you just click whatever color you want and it will become the new color you're using. So that's how you match color when you're doing reference stuff like this, digitally anyway. So I'm just getting the shotgun done now. Now moving on to the visor. For the visor, after I get the paint down, I put a layer effect on and I go to outer glow, grab that orange red, and then just adjust the spread and size until I have a nice glow that I like. Then everything I do on that layer will keep the same glow, nice and consistent, and that's how I got the wrist light in there as well. You can use an airbrush to do the same thing, but it's, for one, it's harder, and for another thing, it's could be less consistent, and the two glowing things might actually not look quite the same when you do it that way. Which, if that's your desired effect, then do it that way, obviously. Okay, so I'm just getting the texture put in now. There's a little texture that shows up in his suit where the light hits it because of the contrast there. So to put in those lines, I just click a spot, hold down shift, and then click the new spot, and it creates a straight line between the two areas. If you hold down shift and draw a line in Photoshop, you can only do X and Y axis, that's straight up and down or straight across. So the only way to get angled lines straight like that is to click, hold shift, and then click again. Alright, so blocking in the deepest shadows here. Still using a pretty opaque non-feathered brush for this, just to get the nice deep stuff in, but then I switch pretty soon to the airbrush. Now I'm using a feathered brush. The reason for that is because there's just so much gradation in 3D objects, and that smooth gradation it's key to get a similar look, or you won't be selling your piece as looking like something even remotely similar to a 3D render. So the way to push really smooth gradations is to start with a deep color, go to your feather into your mid color, and then grab the middle of those two in the middle of your fade, and then fade it again from the middle out, and just keep working that system until you're happy with how smooth the gradation is. Also, I have my layer set to multiply as a layer mode, and if you look, it's called Shadow 1. If you look right next to the actual layer, it shows a little left downward angle over the top of the layer called local color. What that means is that I've attached that layer to the local color layer by, when I created the layer, I held down Alt and I clicked the line directly between the two layers. That attached it to the local color layer. Now everything I do on that layer won't go outside the original local color layer that I made. So it's a really nice way to keep your workflow quick, and also it allows you to blow up your brush and get nice smooth feathered lines without just painting all over the place and making a big mess that you have to come in and clean up with your eraser. It's just a good way to work. So pretty soon here I'm gonna start putting in light. Most of the first shadow, it has been done, and I don't try to get all the shadow work done before I start with light, because what happens is that you think your shadows look good, but then you put light next to them and you realize how dark they actually are. You know, or at least for me, I tend to push too deep into the shadows, not realizing, because I'm trying to get the right contrast, but without light you can't find the right contrast. So it's always good to go shadow 1, then light 1. You'll see I named my layer light 1 above shadow 1, and that way you can kind of just play back and forth until you find the contrast that you're looking for. Also remember, with light, if you look at the reference I'm going off of, you'll see the way light is coming from a specific angle, which is why you have light in some areas and shadow in others. And also the hot spot is up on his arm. That's where light is hitting him the hardest. And then you'll notice that the light is much softer as it comes down his body, because there's only one brightest point of light. If there's only one light hitting, in this case the sun, it's not gonna hit that part that bright and then hit his leg that bright. That's just not how light works, because it's radial. So just always think about that when you're doing your own work and you're not using a reference. Always think about the fact that light is hitting things at a particular point the most vividly, and then everything is dying away because it's round, it's not straight. So those lines are moving away from the main point of contact. All right, let's get back to the piece. Okay, it looks like I'm just probably getting ready to, okay, I'm doing my second light layer now. My first light layer was a little bit pink, so I've added more yellow into this one. I'm using overlay as a layer mode, so that everything I've done underneath, if I want it, everything I've done underneath will show up, because just like multiply, overlay applies itself to what already exists. It doesn't just cover it in an opaque way. So like, for example, the little texture lines I made, when I used the overlay layer over the top, I didn't just paint right over them, virtually wasting my time making the lines in the first place. So it's really good when you are pushing light and shadow on something to use overlay and multiply, because other work you've done will be able to coexist with it, which is really nice, because that's, in real life, that's how things are working. Shadows don't just cover what exists, they darken what exists, and same with light. Okay, so I'm getting the background put in now, because there comes a point in a piece where you really have to put the background in, so all of the colors that are affecting your point of interest they make more sense. Like in this case, it's sunset in the game, and so there's a lot of orange and pink in the sky, which is why it's like a gray color, because when you put like orange and pink with blue, it makes this gray color, which is really warming up the grays in the suit. So it all just looks more sensical with the background, and that's in the case of any piece. You want to get your background in before you start working finishing touches, so that you can really see the way that it's playing off of the rest of the environment. At least that's the way I like to work. Not everybody's necessarily gonna agree with that, but I would think most would. Alright, starting to get into my deepest shadows now and probably general touch up, and at that point now where I'm looking more closely at each thing that I think is a note I need to hit to make it my piece feel like the reference at a distance read. I mean, clearly you can tell if at this zoom that I've painted mine and that one I'm looking at is a 3D render, and you can't make a painting a 3D render. If you wanted a 3D render, you should go 3D render and not paint. So, you know, you always have to draw a line as far as how close you try to get. Not really labor over the idea it's going to look exactly the same, because that takes the fun out of enjoying painting. So, one thing that is going to really help though with getting this to look more like a 3D object is when I start to get rid of the original sketch lines. I'm not going to get rid of all of them because some of them are tying down details that I would just have to go back in and re-push with shadow, and essentially I'd just be recreating lines anyways, so it's like I'd be erasing out lines and then going in and making more lines. So it's good to think about that kind of stuff and try to work smart. But certainly all of the lines in high contrast areas like his visor and the perimeter of the character in general are all going to get erased away. And at the point that happens, it definitely makes a difference. There, I'm erasing them now. And it's just having those sketch lines go away. It kind of tells your brain to stop thinking it's looking at a drawing, which is definitely what we want. Okay, so I've gotten rid of the reference completely now. It's time to just play around with the background a little bit, play with some color. Because I'm such a fan of the game, I do know the color palette pretty well, just off the top of my head. It's one of my favorite parts of the game, in fact. I love all the pinks and purples and vibrant everything. It's just a really, really nice color palette, in my opinion. Great eye candy, so I'm just gonna get some of those pinks and purples in. I'm also putting you'll notice I made a little gradient layer of a slightly lighter pinkish purple at the horizon, because I wanted to break up the monotony of this kind of just plain sky, which I know that in my reference that's how it was, but I'm not a slave to my reference anymore. I made it go away, so now I can just have fun. Pushing some bright spots in the fractures in the sky, which I believe are like opening up a portal to another dimension, but we'll find out when Season 5 opens, I think tomorrow or the next day. Soon. I'm excited. Oh, and also this is Tomato Town. I'm jumping off the pizzeria here, but the tomato at the top of the pizzeria has vanished. It's been eaten by these dimensional whatever rifts. Okay, there I'm making another gradient, just like I did below, with a saturated purple. I take the transparency down quite a lot. I don't want it to be like really obvious, just enough to subtly create interest in that background. I don't want your eye to go, I'm bored, you know, when it looks there. I also don't want the eye to be so stimulated that it stops looking at what's really important, which is the Omega skin jumping at you, about to shoot you in the face with a shotgun. So just getting some finishing touches in here, and this is the phase where you could just noodle forever, so be careful that you don't do that unless you want to. Pushing the contrast up, so one of my favorite things to finish, and there you have it. There's the finished product. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.